Hi there, this is Matt at State of Flux here with the second of my Pixar ruminations. And this one I'm covering A Bug's Life. This is sort of the overlooked movie of the early Pixar pantheon. And it's like kind of easy to tell why. It's nowhere near as good as the films that surround it. However, just like the main character, it's a pretty decent flick. Much in the same way as Hero borrowed heavily from the template of Rashomon or any number of films for that matter, Last House on the Left and The Virgin Spring. This borrows pretty steadily and heftily from Seven Samurai, which is arguably Akira Kurosawa's greatest work, and that works both to this film's benefit, but also to its downfall. What you have here with A Bug's Life is a really strong opening act. Like, the opening 15 minutes are so incredibly engaging, where you're convinced that you're watching like sort of a forgotten gem, almost. But then the second act happens. The scene transition where it goes into basically being its own story to Let's Become Seven Samurai, the whole middle act just doesn't really work terribly well. It's the blandest part of the movie, and it's the longest stretch of the movie, unfortunately. However, it comes back to a rousing conclusion that's very smart, very strong, and I like how, in a deviation from Seven Samurai, they come up with non-lethal means to fight back. And the scene where everybody is sort of watching the abuse Flick is undertaking from, Kevin Spacey. That could have been worded differently. Anyway, the abuse that he's taken from Kevin Spacey's character, the grasshopper, and it gets the ants to rise up, says a lot about sort of class differences and stuff. This movie was reaching well. It just doesn't function on its own as an original feature. Even back when I first saw it, I'd already seen Seven Samurai, and I was like, oh, this is pretty similar. But then I just kept kind of thinking about that movie rather than this. I'm curious to see what somebody who'd never seen Seven Samurai had to say about this movie, if it really kind of tickled them and inspired them in maybe a more compelling way than it did me. But that said, there are plenty of good qualities to be had. The characters are really neat. I like how it reaches, much like Seven Samurai did, but in a completely different way. It orchestrates sort of a class divide and how to maybe overcome that through the rising action of the people that are working under the rich. That's interesting and compelling. This is a movie filled with interesting ideas. It also is a movie that is kind of ahead of its time. At one point it played for comedy, but now could play to an entire grouping of people that might feel included, and that is with the Ladybug character, who you could see like a trans allegory going on there. As I say, it's partially played for comedy, but the comedy is not at the expense of gender, necessarily. It's at the expense of expectation. And I think that's a really interesting notion that the film goes about ahead of its time. I think completely accidentally, but it works. I like the characters just in general overall. They're fun. However, that middle stretch, the whole circus bit, should have been like completely capturing, and it's just not. It falls so flat. And even when those circus characters get brought back and are believed to be the warriors that are going to be their savior and stuff, and how that sort of falls apart under them, something about that middle act is flat and disinteresting. getting back to the other things that I want to talk about, I didn't discuss with my Toy Story review, but the music in Toy Story, the score, is really pretty strong. And I think it's doubly so here. It's an improvement on the score. It sounds very Toy Story-like. I think it's the same composers and Randy Newman and whatnot. But the score is a little more rousing, particularly as the film reaches its conclusion, and I appreciated that. But the biggest benefit here is, Toy Story was a monumental achievement in the realm of computer-generated animation. So much so as it changed the industry, but it didn't change it right away. There were no copycats that came out immediately after. With this one, this for the first time had to compete with another movie, both under the same umbrella of concept that was Ants and A Bug's Life. And if memory serves, Ants at the time was more well received, and also beat them to the theaters. That said, Ants has no lasting legacy, whereas A Bug's Life does, in the sole achievement of how it looks. In those 2 to 3 years between Toy Story and A Bug's Life, the animation department fleshed out what they needed to do and what worked and how to make things look that much more photoreal to considerable achievement. It looks incredibly good. Hold this film up to a still from Ants, which is by no means a bad movie, but hold them next to each other, this movie looks fantastic, and that movie looks like early animation. Like people who didn't necessarily know what they were doing, trying to figure it out. So I think that's, having been through this once before, Pixar really knew how to up the ante and deliver a film that is incredibly good looking for being a second animated feature. You know what I mean? That's, I think, the biggest benefit this film has. But I like it. It's a decent flick. It's a good flick. I would give it a soft 3 stars. It's worth seeing. By no means is it anywhere as good as Toy Story was, or as the film it's based on, Seven Samurai. But for that matter, Seven Samurai has influenced several movies, one of which is The Magnificent Seven. And this is on par with Magnificent Seven. I was not a huge fan of Magnificent Seven, but I get the people who are. And this is sort of like the kid-friendly version. And we're going to get a sci-fi version supposedly this year, I think, with Zack Snyder's Moonquake, or whatever the hell he's calling it. Rebel Moon, that's what it is. But anyway, I digress. Check out A Bug's Life. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, particularly if you've never seen Seven Samurai. And then also go watch Seven Samurai, because it's a masterpiece. It's an ungodly good masterpiece. Drop those down in the comments down below, and next week we will dip back into the Toy Story realm and revisit our buddies Woody and Buzz. So, thanks for watching, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.